Welcome to Spa-Francorchamps in the cozy cockpit of my V10 700 horsepower Dodge Viper. I'm lined up for the 2003 Spa 24 hours. 1 hour race we're doing, but simulating a full 24 hours of day to night to day cycle. And this is GTR2. A favorite of many, I know it is, and something I've been playing with a lot the past couple weeks and doing races just like this, so excited to go through this one and see what happens. In about 10th position as we'll come down to the bus stop here, ending our formation lap, try to get through here without hitting anybody. It's always a challenge. We'll see how everybody starts. Probably we'll pick up a few spots on the starting grid here. This will be fun. I'll explain a lot as we go. Running on 3 times fuel burn, so we'll be pitting a little bit more. But this is almost entirely stock GTR2 as we come to a stop right into La Source. We'll get ourselves around here and down the hill to start our hour race. I'll get a good launch from the cars behind. Here we go. Green flag, away we go. Get around that Ferrari behind me. Try to get in line somewhat. Salene's gonna dip right behind the Ferrari. Oh, he jumps up the inside, up Eau Rouge. All right, close call there. It's always a bit tentative on the start with the AI jumping about, but once we get going, things will work themselves out. We'll rocket down to the Kemmel Straight to Lacombe. Get down into 3rd gear and around that Ferrari behind. This lumbering beast of a car through the corners. The Dodge Viper in 2003 was not the best car in the FIA GT, but there were a lot of them. So the Ferrari's going to dive back up the inside. The Ferrari 550 and 575 were definitely the class of the GT field. And won almost every race, but Spa notably was one race that they did not win. I think Lister, which there's a few of those in this race too, they won one of the other races, but otherwise dominated by Ferrari. But Spa in 2003 was a pretty wild race. Watched back some highlights, just learning a bit about it before recording this. Once I'll dip a wheel off there. Just keeping an eye on my mirror there with that Ferrari, looking for a lunge. Try to get a nice run out onto the straightaway here. Rejoin the public roads. Work towards Blanchimont. Can hear that Ferrari behind. Got one in front as well. Come up to Blanchimont here. And the bus stop. Really a place I'd want to pass or be passed. If I can avoid it, get it slowed down, 2nd gear, hit the curbs. Nice run out. Right on the back of the Ferrari in front. We'll come up to La Source, see if I can stab it up the inside. Oh, he's gonna fade there. All right, doesn't want to be passed. Still sneak the nose up. I'm gonna go side by side through La Source. All right, get the accelerator down. It's a lot of wheel spin in this car coming out of there. Like I said, over 700 horsepower from this machine, sitting in P8 now. P8 out of 62. So things will get busy later on as, whoa, the Ferrari behind. Thought about doing it through Radeon. I don't think that's a good idea. 62 cars in this race, which is one of the best reasons about playing GTR2. So you can run 62 cars without an issue. You can probably run a whole lot more than that if the track supports it. And it's something that was supported all the way back in 2006, although I don't think a lot of folks would have been able to do that back then. I know I certainly wasn't able to. So it's really fun to come back and experience the sim in all its glory. And this is, like I said, almost entirely stock GTR2. I've only made a couple changes, but I think it's really easy. Coming to Pouin here, these two in front, the 2 Salenes, I believe, scrapping it up with each other. It's really easy to go overboard, I think, with some of the modding. There's a ton of really good stuff out there. But it can be overwhelming. You're starting or want to try GTR2 for the first time and think you need to go install a ton of mods. You really don't. I kind of wanted to show that off. Oh, Ferrari's a little slow there. See if we can get him up the inside coming onto the straightaways. Still gonna rock it around the outside. So I actually compromised my line, and now I got a Ferrari to my right as well. There we go. Pull away from him. We got a little more grunt on the straightaways at least. Oh, kind of squeaking up the inside into the bus stop. It's not a good idea. Clobber the curbs there. Let it sort itself out. Alright, once again, right on the back of the Ferrari coming up to the source. Wasn't quite assertive enough there. Spin the wheels a little bit. Alright, come down the hill. So 56 minutes and a half to go. There's actually a car coming out of the pits. I'm up to P7, so we might have had somebody pit in front. Behind, taking a crazy line there, maybe trying to avoid the car coming out of the pit. For the most part, the AI are really good, and I think that's something that really shines, especially with these types of cars in GTR2, is just how raceable the AI are. It comes from that glory days of the offline simulator, where, of course, you could race online in GTR2, and a lot of folks did and still do, but you could also race offline and have a really good experience as well, like we're having right now. And the endurance racing features of GTR2 are, I think, one of the most unique parts about it. The fact that you could actually run a full 24-hour race if you wanted to. You can save a race mid-race and rejoin at any time. You can do driver swaps and pit stops. Almost run right onto the grass there. Just trying to keep my foot in the throttle. Down to third gear, getting held up a bit by this Ferrari now in front. The inside here, a bit more assertive this time. There we go, get around him finally. Make up a position there, so up to P6. Things will get awful busy here in a few laps though, as we catch some of the slower NGT cars, the Porsches and Lotus and BMWs in them. The throttle through Blanchimont, keeping my eye in the mirror, but I think I've got a nice little gap here as long as I don't make any mistakes. Alright, slide it through the bus stop. I love this version of Spa. This was pretty much what was run through the 80s and 90s with Spa, this configuration, and I think 2003 was the final year, because in 2004 the bus stop there is quite a bit different. But it still feels like a street track, a road circuit in this version. The barriers are still close through the end of the lap especially. It has a few more quirks to it. It's not so sanitary, I guess, as the modern circuit is. Getting crossed up a little bit there through Radeon. I have a bit of a gap, but I lost a lot of time to the cars in front. Still a bit of character to the track, and obviously not quite as safe as the circuit is these days, but it keeps it exciting. As we can see, the sun's starting to get pretty low. We have accelerated time on, so it's going to do a full day cycle while we do this race, or at least it should end up thereabouts. It gets very dark here at night, but it's a really nice atmosphere and ambiance. Through Pouhon. Ferrari's caught up to me quite a bit. I actually feel like my tires are going off just a little bit. We're just at about half tank of fuel. I'd love to make it a quarter into the race, 15 minutes or so that we only have to pit 3 times. But have it on accelerated fuel burn so that we get a little more action in the pits. And that might be where I can beat the AI. I'm not sure exactly how they're doing on strategy. We'll see. I think a couple cars might have already pitted, so it might be interesting how it all works out. bumper, that Maranello Ferrari. Oh, he's going to jump up the inside as the Sailing in front dives into the pits. Kind of chickened out of that one and let the Ferrari by. We'll try to stick with him though. Although that car definitely is a bit more capable than our Viper here in most scenarios. Alright, it's starting to get pretty dark now. I'll turn on my lights. AI wait a bit too long to turn on their lights, but they do eventually. There's probably ways to tweak everything. So get back a little bit to what I'm doing here. Stock GTR2. There's really almost nothing that I've added to the sim. And like I said, I think it's really easy to go overboard or think you have to go download every mod that exists to make it playable or fun, as the sun is blinding us now, but look how beautiful it is. Stock graphics. Big sunburst in the face there. There's some really good compilations of add-ons and things to make it a bit easier to go install and get a bunch of updates, the anniversary patches, and I think those are great, but I'm actually playing without that here, because you don't actually need that either. And I think that, even though the installation process for it's quite simple, still some extra steps that might deter some folks from trying it out. But this is the Steam install of GTR2, so just download it from Steam, and I've got two specific patches applied that are both very easy. One, not even really a patch, just something to restore the Ferraris and Porsches. On the Steam version, unfortunately, they block those cars from appearing, which is obviously half the fun here, as I've got one of the Ferraris looking to overtake me now. It's coming with a whole head of steam here, side by side. On the curb a little bit there, but he's going to look to the inside into the bus stop. Wow, outbrakes me there. Oh, and dives into the pits. Man, that was really close. Called into the pits at the last second by his team. Alright, crisis averted. So, one patch to restore the Porsches and Ferraris that should be in this game by default. And that's just a single file, replaces the executable. Then the second patch I have is the Crew Chief patch for GTR2. And I did a whole video about Crew Chief for GTR2. But you'll notice I don't have the spotter talking to me, and that's not required. You don't even really need to install Crew Chief. But with Crew Chief, there comes a DLL for GTR2 to enable a whole bunch of fixes and features to make the sim just so much better in every way. And all you have to do is drag and drop that into the directory as well. And it works without even using Crew Chief itself. And I'll get past this Viper in front, one of my teammates, I think. Not sure, I don't think that was for position, so somehow already a lap down. The Crew Chief patch does so many things. The main thing you're going to notice here is there's no flickering graphics, or very few flickering graphics. It fixes all of that, adds borderless widescreen, adds the ability for there to be flat spots on tires, changes some of the force feedback to make it feel a bit better. But all of that comes just from a single file that you add in, and you don't even really need to configure anything after that. And if you wanted to run the spotter as well, of course you can do that too, which would probably be pretty fitting for these cars in 2003. Car's understeering quite a lot now, light on fuel. 27 gallons, so I should be able to do at least one more lap here, which is good. Get us to that 15-minute mark. So got another Ferrari right behind. Is he going to do the same move? Give him the outside this time in case he's going to pit. Oh, late on the brakes there. I think he did jump in the pits. That was a good idea. Almost losing the rear end through the bus stop. All right. Quite a few cars jumped in the pits, so up to third place, second place. Might actually lead a lap. There we go. Gonna lead a lap here. We should jump in the pits next time by. And the biggest thing of all that crew chief does for GTR2 is fixes the game to utilize your modern processor a bit more. And there's various ways to do all of these things, but it makes it super easy. It just does it by default. So you can run full fields like this on a modern computer and really have no performance issues. We'll blast past the Lotus there. Poor Lotus Elise. So those two patches, the updated EXE to add the Ferraris and Porsches, and then Crew Chief just to clean up the sim a bit overall. I think those two things, from my opinion, are essential, but they're so easy to install. That's all you really need. And then if you really enjoy yourself, you can dive into all of the texture updates and all the mods and tracks and things, but there's so much fun to be had with the stock content. As all the lights are coming on now next to the track. We'll get up behind the BMW, sneak below him through Poulan. And hopefully I'll can make the video bright enough or have clarity enough for you to see what I'm seeing, because it's very dark, but there's still a lot of detail. I love the nighttime atmosphere. Alright, we'll request the pit stop and try to make a good pit entry this time and not speed. I've done this race a few times this week and a few of the other tracks as well, and speeding in the pit lane will absolutely ruin everything. Up on another Viper in front too, but I think he's probably a lap down since I'm in the lead. Alright, pit lane here is super weird. Oh, so I'm going to do the same thing the AI were doing. There we go. Make a big jump too. We'll come into the pits though. The line doesn't start, I think, till up here. Alright, there we go. Bit of a slow entrance there. Hectic though, getting through the bus stop. It's definitely not an ideal scenario, and especially when you're around another car. But we'll come around. The pits use both parts of the pits, of course. The Grand Prix pits here. We actually have to round the corner to find our pit stall. But I'll do 4 tires, fill it with fuel, and see where that puts us. Coming in, pitting from the lead with about 45 minutes to go. I love the pit stop experience in GTR2, and in a lot of my videos I edit out this or choose it as a point to cut, but for this one I'll just leave it running, and you can experience exactly what I do. But we'll come into our stall here. We're going to shut the car down in a second, but we get to change everything. This is such a cool feature in GTR2, but we could choose a different driver if we wanted our teammate to drive. We can obviously change things about our pit stop and our tires. I like that it gives you a pause screen for this, because on one hand it's nice to actually pause the sim, maybe take a break at this point, but also since we don't have a crew chief, or we didn't when the sim originally came out, you can have something to actually make these changes without having to rush through it. All right, but we'll do this. I guess I'll repair my damage. I don't know where I picked that up, but probably somewhere. All right, but I shut off the car. We got a Porsche coming by, and this is where endurance racing gets really interesting to me. Is it kind of gets messy. You don't know who's leading or which cars are for position. Very realistic, especially the older you go or the more vintage you go with some of these races. It just wasn't possible to tell exactly where everybody was, so you just kind of raced until it was done, and then you figured out where you were, or you'll suddenly have these epiphanies about what position you're in or who has to pit. Very immersive. Alright, the crew will change the tires, and we're going to have to get the car started after this, which doesn't always go to plan, but we'll see if I can do it here. Drop the car. Not a bad pit stop. Come on, team. Just waiting for that wrench sound. There we go. Get the car started here. There we go. Get into first gear and away we go. Luckily the limiter's still on so we don't blow our pit speed. Alright, so P8, that's about where I was when I came, or before everyone started pitting, but I think I'm losing a couple more spots back to P11. We'll get to the end of the pit lane here. There we go, off the limiter. But firmly in the nighttime now, and try to merge back onto the track without causing any chaos. The pit exit here, definitely something that needed some improving. There we go. Luckily no cars coming up behind me, but you're kind of on your exit from Radeon as cars are coming out of the pits, and that's actually how it was. cold tires, jumped on the brakes there, full fuel, cold tires. This Porsche in front, you'll see some of the AI are missing lights, and I think that's because of damage, if I'm not mistaken. They'll get damaged and their lights will break and things like that, which I suppose is realistic, but they would certainly get black flagged for it. There might be a way to do that. Alright, but we're definitely passing some of the slower NGT cars. I call them the slower cars, but the notable thing about this race in 2003 was that an NGT car, a Porsche, driven by Romain Dumas, was one of the drivers. One of the three, but they actually won overall. This race was nuts. It had a ton of rain in it. I think it had a false start, a few huge crashes during it, and a lot of attrition. Kind of a scrappy 24-hour endurance race, but yeah, Porsche 911, they won by, I think, 8 laps over the closest car. Ooh, as I give a tag there to that Porsche, I got in my way. See if I can dip underneath this yellow and white one. It's an era of racing I'm really only familiar with through this sim itself, and I'd love to learn a little bit more about the era overall, because I know there's some big fans of it, some cars jumping in the pits there. But it'd be great to learn all the drivers and all the different cars, their quirks and things. Got a Ferrari in front here. I'm in 10th now. Slower cars in front jockeying for position, trying to get through Lasource up on the inside of the Ferrari. There we go. Get around him, dip to the left side of this Porsche, trying to get both of them before Eau Rouge P7. So alright, getting some of the spots back, which is good. A scary jump into Eau Rouge that time. It's a really nice era. I don't know if it's better than the modern era. I'm sure there's a lot of folks that think it's way better than the modern era. I think it's just different. And it's kind of neat to have this time capsule, because again, when this game came out, 2006, this season was a few in the past. I think this sim comes with 2003 and 2004, so it didn't actually have the most recent season, but it was more or less contemporary. So now we have this interesting time capsule of a sim that is actually doing what you'd probably think of as vintage these days, being almost 20 years old at this point, this race. Jump up the inside of one of the slower Ferraris behind a Corvette here that has no rear lights at all. At least they're not glowing. Tells me he might have been rear-ended at some point. Get him. That car is fun to drive. That's the C5R, I believe. I could be mistaken there. C3R, maybe. Someone will correct me, but I know iRacing used to have that car. Or maybe still does, but used to actually race it. And did a lot of racing in that car back in the day. Inside of another Porsche. It really seems to plan your passes and make sure you wait if you really need to at an appropriate time. Into Blanchimont, got a bad turn in there. But just through the first third of the race now, and things are getting nice and spread out. It's really hectic at the start. But as some cars retire and everybody finds their spot and their pace, we get into that progression, that monotony in a pleasant way. A pleasant monotony that is endurance racing. It's very calming. I love doing these hour-long races. I've quite a few videos now where I'm doing these 1-hour races, and it's what I spend a lot of my sim time doing if I'm just doing something random. Do a full 24-hour time cycle, whether it's in GTR2, but also AMS2 does it well, R-Factor 2 does it as well. And just get some nice laps. It's a long enough race where there's some substance to it, but it's not too long that it takes you forever to complete. So driving-wise, GTR2 holds up so well. Mike from Sim Racing 604 did a video around this track in these cars. I think he was driving the Ferrari though, but not too long ago, just talking about how great GTR2 is. And I totally agree with him. It's just, it feels very good. It's not, the most modern feeling thing, and there are better versions of these exact cars out there for other sims, but as a package, as a whole simulator of this type of racing, it does it very convincingly. And just the ease, once you get things set up, which again is so easy, it's really not difficult. Once you get things set up, it's a lot of fun just to jump in, pick a car, track, and away you go. And then if you do like modding and editing, there's so much out there for this. But also everything is tweakable. So if you have a little issue or the AI are slightly too fast at one track but not others, you can really change everything about this sim. And it's likely that somebody already has fixed almost any issue that you could run into. Getting almost near halfway. The time absolutely flies in these races. The car slides in a bit to the source. So I am leading the race again. I didn't even notice that. That might have happened on this lap though. So it might work out that I win this one off of pit strategy or something. I'm 13 seconds up on the car behind me. This car is exiting the pits in front. Give him space there. Can't believe the pit exit was actually like that in real life, but it was. This track recently obviously has gone through a big change, and we've just seen the 2022 version of this race. And yeah, I mean, they obviously keep on making the track safer. And overall, I'm happy they didn't straight line Eau Rouge and Raidillon, which seemed like it was a possibility, but you have to wonder what they're doing it all for, especially if Formula One doesn't come back here, which I can't believe is on the table. Dip up the inside of this Porsche. It's a little uncomfortable, but able to get them all right. Whole group of cars in front struggling. I can't believe that Formula One wouldn't race here. But if they don't, do they need to keep doing what they're doing to the track or not? Who knows? Somebody has paid a lot more than I do to answer those questions. Let's go past this Ferrari and just work my way through this little pack. Actually looks like one of the Ferraris I was battling earlier just made contact there with that Porsche. We've got a Viper in front. Sit half throttle there for a minute. Just wait for everybody to work it out amongst each other. Should be more than fine on fuel now, having made it to 15 past that first stop. Well, Viper's going to turn in on me. Come around the outside, so come up to La Source, past the 911 as well. There's going to close, just make contact with the Porsche in front. Very light contact though, and able to get in front of him before Eau Rouge. Always exciting getting through lap traffic. This track I think is the obvious one to do these types of races on from the stock GTR2, but they're all quite fun, and all the circuits that come with GTR2 talk about consistency and having a complete package. I mean, they're all very high quality. For non-laser scan tracks, I think they're some of the best that were made. It was just before laser scanning started to be an option for Sims, and I think they did a great job recreating these tracks. They're not perfect, but they really look nice. And there are tons, included in the anniversary packages or elsewhere out there, tons of updates to add better textures and things. to the cars and the tracks and improve the visual quality of everything, but I kind of like the stock look of it. It all fits together well, so maybe it's not the most realistic looking thing, but nothing stands out as being out of place. Sometimes get that look when something's low poly but a high quality texture that just looks a little funny. You don't get any of that here. This is a Moser in front of me here. Looks like a Corvette from behind, and I think uses a Chevy engine, but don't quote me on that. Almost like a Saleen or a McLaren from the front, though. An interesting car. I don't know much about that one. Close enough to dive up the inside. Probably could have. Well, got a nice lead now, so don't want to take any chances. Hold out another 3 seconds on the car behind. Never know, they can surprise you right at the end and maybe pit a time less, but I might be able to get away with this one. More for the driving experience than exactly where I finish. But it's so much fun to have so many cars to pass, and it's something that I really wish I could do in a modern sim. I think there's some rumors of AMS2 maybe adding support for more cars, and I know like Assetto Corsa Competizione or even Assetto Corsa itself, you can get updates and technically run almost as many cars as you'd want at a track, but it's hard to pull off. Even with a really good computer, it just isn't possible to get good performance running 60 cars. In really any sim. So having a sim where you can run 60 cars pretty effortlessly like this, or you can even run 100. And if folks are interested in that, could do a race around the Nürburgring with over 100 cars. You can really simulate a VLN event if you want, which is a favorite of mine. But that's one of the most fun things about this. It's always having something to race, to pass, and make things interesting. It's not just lapping. And it's realistic. There are a lot of cars in a lot of these races, and it's part of what keeps them interesting. Call it to the bus stop here. It's 34 gallons. We're going to at least do one more lap here, and we're just about halfway, crossing that way, that mile marker now, or that time now. You can see in the bottom right, I guess this is a third add-on, if you want to call it that I am running. So I lied in that there was only two things, but I am running SimHub for the UI instead of the stock UI, which I like. The stock UI works fine. It has everything you'd want to know, but for me it has a little too much information on it. Maybe not exactly the right information. I've got a 28-second lead now, but it's probably because of pit stops. So with SimHub, you can make exactly what you'd want to be on your UI. So just have some information about the laps and the time remaining in position, pretty minimal. There's a few different HUDs floating out there, and it's very easy to make your own. And I've found a lot of HUDs that are made for other sims work with GTR2 as well. Just waited for a second there behind the Ferraris. The slower Ferraris. They're actually a lot of fun to drive, that one. The inside into No Name. One of the trickier corners on this track. Oh, it double shifted there. In behind this Porsche into Poulan. Dip to the bottom there. Follow the Ferrari through. I don't know if this was the Ferrari I was racing right at the beginning, but I think I've seen him a couple times now, and it's definitely not for position anymore. the brakes there. So, well, I think I'll pit this time. I think I can squeeze another lap out of it, but there's no reason to chance it with such a big lead, and we're over halfway, so we're doing fine on strategy. I'll come in and do the same thing. Fuel, tires. Let's see how it all works out. Is going to be right with another car as we come to the end of the lap here. Such a tricky entrance to the pit lane. I guess you just have to really let off and then wait for him to turn in and then go straight. I can see why they wanted to change this. Alright, we'll come to the start of the pit road. Definitely don't want to speed now. There we go. Alright, so made it through the second stint, over halfway. It should start getting lighter here soon. But I like the nighttime, the lights around the track, obviously with all the cars having the lights. Get a nice view. We'll see if we can see it here when we get to the pit stall. Of all the cars going down and through Eau Rouge with their lights on. It looks really cool. Take a look for our crew here right at the start of pit lane. Got the easiest pit stall, so that might be some of our advantage as well. Got a Lister storm up the road there. All right, but we'll stop in the stall. And yeah, we're going to do the same things. I still have aero damage somehow. I guess I did hit that Porsche. So we'll stop the car and turn off the engine. There we go. It's a little delayed on that. All right, they're filling it with fuel then. This has Le Mans style rules, so you can't fill and change tires at the same time. You have to do them separately. So it does change strategy a bit, because you may be more likely to double stint your tires if you can save a whole bunch of time on the pit road. Got a Corvette coming in there. Maybe they'll fix the lights on it. Yeah, you can see the cars just behind my crew member in front, going up Eau Rouge and Radion. Alright, changing the tires here. We're still in first position, so things are looking really good. I'm gonna win this one by a mile. Alright, there comes a Ferrari. Still plenty could happen, so we'll see what happens here. Second half. Alright, there we go. Get the car started here. There it is. First gear, pull away. It almost jump-started down the hill, I think. But about a minute-long pit stop, and I'm still first, but 3.3 seconds, so I think just about to be passed for the lead. That might have been it. Maybe not. Alright, come out of the pit lane and head up the hill. So retaining the lead through the pit stop, so I have a really big lead then. You can crank up the AI more. They're on pace, they shouldn't be so different, maybe because of the fuel strategy. They've fallen behind, or if certain cars get some damage. It's all about the attrition and everything too, so could have thrown them off. I have them on 102% if I didn't say that already. And with this car, it'd be hard to keep up with them in qualifying. Like I said, I got 10th on the grid. See if we can survive the rest of the race, keep our lead, and ultimately win. See one car behind me, which might be second place. Ooh, it's got a little smoke in front. Might be that BMW. That BMW had a massive accident in the real 24 hours. Made the highlight reel. Just demolished the front end of the car through No Name. We'll dive up the inside. Oh, he hits me. I thought he was going to give me the space. Well, that won't help the car. Steering wheel's still straight, so I think I'm all right. So I'll blow the next corner. All right, so got to stay vigilant passing the lap traffic, of course, and it's starting to get a bit lighter out now, too. Come up behind the Gillette. It's the only Belgian-made car in the race for sure, but even, I think, overall. Belgian company. There's a lot of cars made in Belgium, constructed in Belgium, but not Belgian-based companies. So that car is a favorite of many, but not the quickest. Get out of first gear here. .2 seconds up, so I'm not that far ahead, and I bet that car behind me was second place, but they definitely had to pit before me, so we'll see how it all shakes out here in the last 23 minutes, last third of the race or so. But simply just fun lapping the track. There's a lot to do in GTR2 beyond just single races, and that's another thing that makes the sim pretty awesome these days, is all the extra stuff. So you of course have the lessons and the school that's a part of it, and it's very good actually. There's some lessons specifically that have turned into, I won't call them memes, but they are memorable for being really difficult to get a gold on. And actually the car in front of me, the Lotus here, is one of the cars I think you used for the very first lesson. And it has almost a Gran Turismo style lesson school to teach you some different concepts of racing and then some actual driving parts to it. I'll stick behind him here for the second part of Poulon. It's a really fun thing to do, but I also think it does a decent job at helping teach you some stuff. And when this sim came out, 2006, sim racing had easily been around for a decade at that point in the way we think of it today. Of course, it's been around longer than that, but mid-90s are really when I think the first wave of simmers really started. And so by 2005, 2006, folks had been around a decent amount of time, but there were a lot of new folks, and GTR2 was not an uncommon entry point. You go over to your friend's house and see them playing this, and you would definitely want in if you're interested in cars. Get around that Ferrari there. No dramas. So a lot of folks tried GTR2 for the first time, so having a lesson school that it includes was a really good feature. It definitely could teach you a lot if you really wanted to learn how to race and you didn't just enjoy crashing the cars, which is fine as well. Something like that helps. Rushing down the hill here, 8.3 seconds up, really nothing to worry about. Just got to do my clean laps and avoid the slower cars like that. There's also championship mode, which lets you run a full offline championship and actually features a ton of different championship cups where they break apart the different makes and have single make series and use some of the less common layouts on the tracks. And there is a whole unlocking system as a part of GTR2 specifically for the track versions, which I was never a huge fan of in a simulator. I kind of want everything to be available, and I think everybody shares the same sentiment. Oh, there's the sun. We'll turn off our lights. I think everybody shares that same sentiment, since I don't think there are any sims these days which lock you from tracks, at least not monetarily. But that does exist here. There's an easy cheat code to unlock everything if you wanted to. But yeah, a lot of fun cups, like a Porsche cup, and there is one for the Viper as well. And then of course the actual full championship, and you can do the actual full championship, and I think it's viable in a sim like GTR2. It's got a little smoke in front, a group of cars, which are likely the culprit. Because you can save races in GTR2 and have co-drivers do stints, you could actually do full races in this, I think. If you really enjoyed this type of racing, you wanted to simulate the full season, full races, I think the normal races were kind of like they are these days, 2 hours or maybe a bit longer. Then they had Spa here, which was the 24-hour. Le Mans is not part of the FIA GT Championship, so that's not included, obviously, but a lot of fun to be had with that. And never have done a full one. And I have, back in the day, done some of the offline championship stuff, which is a lot of fun. Fifth gear through there. It's actually quite nice. It's got the Ferrari coming out in front. It's the same Ferrari I've seen a whole bunch of times. He's pitting with 18 minutes to go, which is not a good sign. One thing I've really noticed, and I'm not sure if it's crew chief that's adding this or part of the stock GTR2, but the curbing feels really nice within the forced feedback. So I went a bit wide there. Just do a late apex, diamond off the corner, we're all right. When you touch the curbs, you do get a nice feeling. You definitely don't want to hop the curb. For most of the curbs, they have sharp edges on the other side, which can kind of catch you, but you do get a nice little rumble, tug in the wheel when you hit the curbs that helps you know exactly where you are on the track. The tracks overall, the default ones anyway, are definitely very smooth, which definitely part of a product of its times, not laser scanned, just built by hand from photographs and maps. Definitely are pretty smooth overall compared to how they maybe should be, but this track itself's not too bad. It's got some bumps in it here and there, but it was a Grand Prix track, so they were fairly smooth overall. With about a half tank of fuel, we're actually going to be very good on fuel, and I can probably short fill it, but I don't think I need to try anything too risky. We should be able to easily get to the end. There's the Porsche in front pits. I imagine you would do some type of signaling to let folks know that you were going to pit. I do wonder what this looks like to somebody that wasn't into sim racing at the time, or maybe wasn't even around when this came out. If this looks interesting at all, I imagine if you're this far into this video that you probably have a lot of interest in it, just generally, but it's not the newest, but I do like how it looks. Definitely a bit of nostalgia there. It's just very clean, especially with the crew chief patch. You don't have any of the flickering or anything like that, which kind of always plagued this sim. Got some nice anti-aliasing on, running it at a huge resolution compared to what we did back then, and it just looks nice and clean. Not a lot of special effects and things like that to muddy up the image. It is one of my bigger complaints about specifically ACC, which I never do videos on, so I never share my opinions, but for as great as that sim is at doing a lot of things, it's just not a very good looking sim when it comes down to filtering and things. And I've tried all the different settings and anti-aliasings and resolution hacks and things. It doesn't have the clarity, and I think that's an engine limitation. You see that in a lot of sims. Not even just racing sims. Truck sim comes to mind, which I have done a stream on before, but that sim itself really has poor anti-aliasing, although it's gotten better with some of the updates they've done. Below the Porsche there, what side are you going to choose? Down at the inside, there we go. Tartan patterned Porsche. Dive around all these guys. We've got one car in the middle of nowhere there. It looks like a lister. Haven't really seen any listers during this race so far. Actually might have one in front of me now, but the yellow one there went through the grass. Lister is such a cool car. It's one of my favorite choices for this sim. And I did take a look a while back at Simbin's first real simulator, which was a mod for F1 2002, which covered the 2002 GT season. Over a minute ahead now. My oh my. Jump the curb a little bit there, alright. That mod though drove the Lister in that. I'll come up behind him, we're actually slipstreaming him. Black car here in front. Jump on the brakes quite heavily there. Really cool car. And actually did win a race in 2003. Something coming around the outside. He's just going to get stuck up behind this Porsche. Both let me by around the outside. The cars all do have a very unique handling characteristic. This Viper just understeers a lot. So you have to learn how to combat or take maybe more arcing lines and purposely try to get it to oversteer. The Lister there is a lot more twitchy. I've driven these Porsches quite a bit too. Look for the spot there. I thought he was going to close the door on me, like the BMW did. Get around the outside of him as well. Just a little love tap on the way by. The Porsche drives distinctly like a Porsche though. They're fun, enough fun to be had with the stock cars that are included. I think that's something else too, with a lot of the mods that are out there. There's so much good stuff. There's also so much stuff that's just got different methodologies behind how it's developed, or somebody's different idea about tires and things. Come into the hairpin here, or the chicane rather. Alright, we'll do one more lap here before we pit. We only have 12 minutes to go. But definitely won't need a full tank to get to the end, but I might just take one to be safe and do the strategy I set out to do. Yeah, folks develop mods. Anytime you have modding happening, there might be different methodology behind how tires should work or how the car's physics overall should function. And so you do end up with a gamut of different types of feeling cars, and even with tracks and things like that. So, and at least with the stock content, everything's got a baseline to it, and it might not be to everybody's liking. There's been a lot of tweaks to it over the years that you can find, but it's all very consistent. You definitely can't blame them for that. The inside of the Porsche here. There are a couple older 911s, which I'm not seeing any of them, but we had an accident or something early on. We've got another Lister in front, so as soon as I say we're not seeing any Listers, then we see all of them. Alright, so we'll come in this lap, take our final pit stop, and then hopefully just ride on to victory. A nice easy race. I thought that would be a little more competitive than this. I think I've just driven a lot better in this one than I do sometimes, maybe. But you could bump up the difficulty. So, understeer into the Porsche. Well, that's my fault, maybe. Decent whack there. The car feels alright, but I'm going to have some damage, I think. By the look of the cars in the real Spa 24 from 2003, there was a lot of that happening. Looks like every car has a ton of damage by the end of the race. Fenders missing, debris everywhere all over the track. It's an interesting one to go back and watch if you've never seen it. So we'll jump into the pit lane there, and I didn't request my pit stop. I just did, so hopefully that was enough. Alright, come down. The limiter on there. Very slow entrance again, but no need to risk a stop and go or anything like that. We'll come take the final pit stop here. Have to be careful with this pit wall through the source inner hairpin. It's very tight, and luckily it's missing right there. Sometimes you may understeer your way off. Alright, so come down. I'm going to take full fuel and tires again. I don't think we have to worry about anything, and it would be better than miscalculating and running out in the final minute. Alright, so we'll put on slick tires. I will repair the damage. Only 6 seconds for it. Shut off the car again. Alright, so we'll see how it all shakes out now. I don't think they're going to pass me, but you never know. I had over a minute lead, and the pit stops are about a minute, it looks like, even with fixing the damage and changing tires and everything. So I've outsmarted the computer today. But you can crank up the difficulty, and possibly due to accelerating the fuel burn as well, that it miscalculates somewhat. with the Lister in front pulling out. The Porsche coming in behind me, changing tires already. Get ready for them to drop me here. Alright, there we go. Start the car. There we go. Throw into first gear. Get out of the pit lane. Always feels like you can never start the car fast enough. But only 12 seconds back. That's a bit more than last time though. So I think I'm safe. Still sitting in P1. Come to the pit exit then. Throttle down. Moser's just in front. There's another Lister has gone by. Nice and easy. We'll cut the track a bit there. Hope I don't get a penalty for that. The pit exit, but no stewards saw me. Alright, so back on the track. I think I'm safely in the lead now. Just take it easy for the first corner, make sure everything feels good. It didn't seem like the Viper was too successful in 2003. Maybe the Ferrari was just so good, because the Viper did win quite a lot of races in general. Nothing as a part of the 2003 season as far as I saw. Took a risky move up the inside of that Porsche there. Just over 6 minutes left. Do play this, you get a little bit sick of the default circuits. I think the next logical step would be the Virtua LM tracks that exist, and they made some amazing circuits for this that are much better than the original tracks for the game. Quality is just amazing. They have Sebring and Le Mans, several versions of Le Mans, as well as Mid-Ohio, which I did do in my last video. Rouen as well. Some really, really nice tracks that are fun to race around. The Le Mans track definitely has to be one of the highlights of it overall. You have both versions that would fit this time period, as well as pre-chicanes and everything, so you can run the Mulsanne uninterrupted around the Moser there. There's 3 cars in front. Looks like a Ferrari as well. Interesting to see how big the gap was at the end of this. I have to imagine they took an extra pit stop to be this far ahead. P1, 5 minutes to go, 23-second lead. Just clobber the curve there through Eau Rouge. I haven't talked at all about the sounds. I think they sound really good for such an old sim, and even compared to some of the newer stuff. I'm thinking mainly the original Assetto Corsa, which is not popular for its sounds, but these are just as good as that, I would imagine. You can really immerse yourself in the sounds for GTR2. Late on the brakes there, luckily snuck in this time. Didn't go bowling. Stuck behind the Lotus though. The Lister's going to go to the left. I'll follow him through. Porsche here. Get a good exit, rocket around. The cars are just really fun to drive. Once you get comfortable with them, it feels like you could almost drive forever. Which I think that's how an endurance sports car is really supposed to feel. It should be comfortable to drive. Be able to drive pretty fast without feel like you're risking the car, because you have to do it for so long. I mean, the full length of this race isn't even how long a single stint would be for a real driver in a real race like this. most certainly be racing at least over an hour. I think we're gonna have to do 2 more laps here. Lock up the tires a little bit there, quick on the downshift to first. Alright, come across the line, just about 3 minutes. So we should have to do 1 more lap after this. Got plenty of fuel, of course. No real concerns from behind, just nice flat out driving in the Viper. Just thinking we weren't going to see one of the older Porsche 911s, but I believe this in front of me is one of them. I recognize the rear wing's quite a bit different. It has much taller headlights, I believe. Yeah, it's more like a classic Porsche 911. I always chose that one when I first got this game. That, or there's one from the Proton team that I like the colors, red and black. Quicker than my competing Viper teammates. Just negotiate this couple of Porsches here. Come around the left side, that's risky. I just got away with it though. Alright, get around the other one too. Almost cross paths with him there. Come up to the bus stop. A lot of traffic, of course, for these final couple of laps, just to make it interesting. Up to La Source here. It should be starting the final lap now. Just a minute to go in the race. Over a minute ahead of the car behind, so I have no reason to rush through this traffic. Just take it nice and easy here. One car exiting the pits in front. Ooh. Oh, makes contact with the Morgan. I was wondering when we were going to see the Morgan. The Saline in front. I believe this is the car I started behind. There's the Morgan, the blue car to the left. That's an interesting car. And, definitely a cult favorite. Get right up behind the Saline here. Through Lacombe. Make a little contact. All's good. It's good to see the Morgan's going to make it to the finish line. Alright, work it down the hill. Finally through all that traffic. Made for an interesting last few laps though, but the clock has officially run out. Just navigate the end of the lap. Got one Ferrari in front of me, which will be fairly quick. But yeah, just not a very competitive race, but just some nice driving, and hopefully a talk through some of what makes GTR2 still a pretty awesome sim. I hope I emphasized how easy it is to get up and running, so I know that's the barrier many think exists, but it's on Steam, and you don't even actually need the 2 patches that I mentioned, but I think they do help a lot, and I'll put the links to those in the description here. Oh, run wide. But Crew Chief, and then of course the little patch to restore the Ferraris and the Porsches. You can play GTR2, I think, like it was intended, and have a really good time with a really, really good sim. Not only for its time, but also even these days. Alright, but come through the final corner, and feeling very accomplished of myself. Winning here at Spa, but overall, just having a lot of fun.